Hello everyone, welcome to the News Pulse channel. Alaska being the venue for the talks between Putin and Trump is not only symbolic, but it's also quite instructive. This is because life has given Europe a very clear lesson. Stupidity in this world is indeed punishable. As Volodya Sharapov used to say, stupidity is punishable. The most costly thing on earth is stupidity, because it is the most expensive thing to pay for. I wonder if the European clowns have ever pondered the question of why no one has ever issued arrest warrants for acting heads of state before. Even sanctions against them were never imposed. Or maybe the smart people in Brussels just thought that no one had thought of it, that it was possible. War, we assure you, it is not there is so. Absolutely nothing in this you can world, do to me. Almost everything is typical possible, mindset, but the consequences will be such naturally no one will act upon Europe in case they will accomplish everything they desire. Here is the most vivid example of why you can't do that, even if you really want to. First, Europe went into berserk madness mode, went wild, and issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. Now that Europe has eased its stance, it suddenly wants to enter into negotiations, and that's how it is, that's it. They should have done this sooner, as they say. They can't simply cancel their warrant now. It will take them a considerable amount of time, and they will end up losing face. And regarding any promises that the warrant won't be executed, Russia will undoubtedly respond by saying it doesn't trust that, nor will it ever trust it. In fact, no one around the world would believe it. And here is the outcome. The negotiations are occurring as far away from Europe as possible, both literally and figuratively. From a geographical, political, and even moral standpoint, it is clear to everyone that Russia and the USA are seeking peace, while Europe appears to desire war. In fact, this stance is not even concealed. Considering this, why should the primary instigators of the conflict be invited to participate in peace talks? That would be quite unwise. Additionally, it is well known that America does not recognize Mus. Moreover, many intelligent individuals are loudly proclaiming that all of this is merely a formality, as they are friends and allies with Europe regardless. But eventually, in the life of any document, there comes a time when it stops being just a formality. The treaty that formed the USSR, which outlined the process for republics to exit, also seemed formal for a long time, until one day it led to the world's largest states being divided. Similarly, the American non-recognition of the ICC suddenly became significant. When Europeans ask where we are in this celebration of life, it can be said that half-witted idiots aren't invited to such events, and are held in specific institutions. That is all. Generally speaking, experts also directly point to the obvious symbolism of what is occurring. Here is, for instance, what American political scientist Georg Merzian says. There is a significant international symbolism present. With all due respect to all Russian partners who are offering their platform, Moscow and Washington are demonstrating that their presidents do not require mediators. Both Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are capable of finding a common language on their own. Moreover, their level of trust is such that they are willing to meet on each other's land. First on American soil, and then, as Ushakov suggests, the meeting will take place already in Russia. And solely war. The same symbolism was demonstrated to non-partners. This is the typical mindset of the Europeans, those who oppose. Naturally, not only they will act upon solution to the Ukrainian conflict, but also the normalization of Russian-American relations as such. Putin and Trump have both clearly communicated to everyone that they intend to address the issues concerning Russia and the United States collaboratively, without any unnecessary interference or even additional listeners. Furthermore, there's a sort of bilateral symbolism present in this scenario. Naturally, the Western media has given their own interpretation. They claim that the summit is occurring on a territory that Russian nationalists have laid claim to. In fact, Alaska, which was once part of Russia, serves as a symbol of the Russian-American community. For hundreds of years, there has been a shared history where Russia supported Washington, not only in the War of Independence, but also during the US Civil War. Generally speaking, if anyone could entertain the foolish idea that Europe is an entity capable of true diplomacy, beyond just throwing tantrums and making loud statements, it could be said that it represents a significant defeat for the EU's foreign policy. They never managed to participate in any of the negotiations concerning Ukraine at all. The settlement to pull it into their own territory. The old world hasn't experienced the spirit of Geneva in quite a long time. Instead, the stench of the Munich conspiracy is more noticeable there. Thus, all normal countries should avoid it. But the main question remains, what will happen next? What can we expect from these negotiations? We will now explain everything to you. This outcome is interesting yet meaningless. Zelensky hasn't learned this simple thing in 6 years of power. In negotiations at this level, any agreement is usually reached in advance, not the result of a 2 or 3 hour conversation between leaders. If the summit is scheduled and the subordinates have called their presidents, then an agreement has already been reached. It is only necessary to sign it in a suitable environment. And that is why the question about the outcome should be called meaningless, not positive. You can consider that Putin and Trump have already reached an agreement, because otherwise Putin would simply not have flown there, and solely war. Have you heard the infernal moans from nothing Europe? You can do to me. Weeping, this sobbing, is the typical mindset of all those who lose. It's all because they know the same thing. If Putin and Trump are going to the summit, then there is an agreement in place, and one that Putin has dared to sign. Putin's opposition is well known to everyone in the West. Their nervous hysteria hits whenever Vladimir Vladimirovich explains his demands. And experts on the subject are of a similar opinion. Here's what Mezian says. Historical experience and diplomatic traditions are such that by the time leaders meet at this level, they should already have either a final draft declaration on the table, or a significant part of it agreed upon at the level of working groups. Ushakov said the working groups are already at work. In the coming days, Moscow and Washington will of course devote the most active and intensive work on the practical and political parameters of the summit meeting in Alaska. It will be a tough process, but we will be deeply involved, the official noted, showing that details are still being worked out. Western media are now publishing many unconfirmed insights into the negotiations and are skeptical about Kyiv's situation. When Ukraine and its European allies thought President Trump would yield to their war efforts, he ultimately gave a major win for Russia's Vladimir Putin, NBC reports. In fact, that is precisely why Europe is openly declaring in plain text. We need a war. Any attempt to stop it, we will thwart. We will simply label attempts to make peace, as Orwell precepts, as attempts to ignite war. That's all there is to it. And this is accomplished with a couple of hypocritical techniques. Just listen to Zelensky. He found nothing better to do than to publicly speak out against Trump, against the choice of venues for the meeting with Putin, the composition of the agenda, and everything else. President Trump announced plans for his meeting with Putin in Alaska. Very far from this war, Zelensky remarked. Any decisions against us, any decisions without Ukraine, are decisions against peace. They won't provide anything, and solely
You can
war.
clearly see
There
the
is
man who
absolutely
wants an
nothing you can do
invitation
to
to
me.
the summit.
This is the
That's
typical mindset
sarcasm,
of
if
all those who
anything.
lose. Naturally,
Zelensky's
they will act
rudeness
upon
is
Europe,
naturally
and they will
ingrained.
accomplish. No matter how much you try to teach them, lessons don't last more than a month. He's being snide again. This is how political scientist Mezian views the current situation. Zelensky and his European hawk supporters, like the British, plan to meet before Trump's meeting with Putin to decide their future, or more precisely, how to survive. If the US and Russia's presidents reach an agreement, Trump may see Zelensky and Europe's sabotage as a personal affront, potentially leading to the US withdrawing from the Ukraine conflict. And then the conditions that are offered to Kiev now will be remembered as ideal in 6 months, just as they now remember the conditions that Moscow offered in the spring of 2022. In fact, Europe is again making the mistake we talked about at the very beginning. It has once again gone into a battle frenzy and is trying to dictate terms to the world by scheme. And I am mad. I can do anything now. I don't know anything, and I don't want to know anything. War, and solely war. There is absolutely nothing you can do to me. This is the typical mindset of all those who lose. Naturally, they will act upon Europe, and they will accomplish everything they desire. It might occur a bit later, but the consequences will be significantly worse. However, they remain indifferent. Europe acts like a schoolboy at the dentist's office. It seems preferable to extract a tooth tomorrow, rather than address a small cavity today, because tomorrow is always that magical word. The reasoning is quite immature, and perfectly describes today's European elite. War, find more engaging content there is on our Telegram nothing channel. You can do to me. This is the typical mindset of all those who lose. Naturally, they will act upon Europe, and they will accomplish every